They say silence is golden, but not when it echoes through a heart once filled with laughter, with warmth, with presence. A woman doesn't always speak her deepest truths out loud, but in your absence, she feels everything. And this is what she feels. It starts quietly. At first, it's just the space. An empty chair, the untouched side of the bed, a silence that stretches longer than it used to. The air begins to feel different. There's a kind of stillness that doesn't bring peace, it brings awareness. Awareness that something, someone, is missing. She looks around and sees the same walls, the same room, the same surroundings. But everything feels different now, like the life has been sucked out of the familiar. You see, people think women only miss you when they cry or reach out. No, sometimes the ache shows up in silence. In the way she sits with her thoughts, in the way she overthinks why you haven't shown up, in the way her heart sinks a little deeper every time her phone lights up. And it's not you. She carries the absence like a weight on her chest. It's not heavy all at once, it builds, moment by moment. She remembers that joke she wanted to share, that story she saved for later, that piece of her day that suddenly feels irrelevant now. Because what's the point of holding onto something when the person you're holding it for might never care again? Her mind starts replaying moments that once felt small, but now feel massive in their absence. The way you used to say her name, the way you'd text just to check in, the way your presence used to ground her, calm her, and now it's just silence. But the worst part, the world doesn't stop, everything moves forward. Work, friends, responsibilities, they all demand her attention, so she smiles, she responds, she shows up. But inside, she's carrying a hollow version of herself, the version that wonders when it all shifted. When did presence become absence? When did connection become distance? And she doesn't have the answers, so she starts to fill in the gaps with her own questions. Did she talk too much? Did she care too deeply? Did she expect too much? Because when someone you cared about disappears without explanation, the heart doesn't search for logic. It searches for blame, and most of the time that blame turns inward. She won't tell you this. She won't even tell her friends the full story, because sometimes the grief of absence is too complex for words. It's not about drama or needing attention. It's about loss of energy, of connection, of feeling seen. There's no funeral for this kind of loss. No one brings flowers. No one calls to check in, because technically nothing happened, but emotionally everything changed. The absence becomes a ghost that follows her, not loud, not obvious, but present. In the way her eyes glaze over during dinner, in the way she hesitates before laughing, in the way her voice softens when someone asks if she's okay. When a woman doesn't hear from someone she once felt close to, someone she allowed into her sacred emotional space, the silence doesn't just sit there. It starts to whisper, and the first place it whispers into is her confidence. She begins to wonder if she was too much, too emotional, too needy, too open. She replays conversations in her head, not just once, but over and over again, looking for clues, something she might have missed. A tone in her voice, a word that came out wrong, a moment when maybe she should have held back but didn't. And in that internal replay, something dangerous starts to happen. The story shifts. The woman who once felt sure of herself begins to question her very worth. Because absence, when unexplained, doesn't feel neutral. It feels like rejection, and rejection, even when silent, feels personal. You see, women are natural nurturers. They pour into people. They give with their hearts. They open doors in their soul that they rarely ever open. And when someone walks through that door and suddenly leaves without warning, it leaves her questioning whether she was ever enough to begin with. She may not say it out loud, but deep inside there's a voice asking, if I was truly special, wouldn't he have stayed? That question hurts, not because she needs constant validation, but because she gave something real, and when real things are met with silence, it creates a vacuum, a place where insecurity festers, and it doesn't just stay in the context of that relationship. It leaks into other areas of her life, She second guesses her appearance. Was I not beautiful enough? Was I not interesting enough? She second guesses her personality. Maybe I came off too strong. Maybe I should have hidden how I felt. She begins to think that showing love is somehow a mistake, that vulnerability is a weakness she needs to unlearn, and that's the real tragedy. It's not just about missing a person. It's about losing a version of herself she once felt proud of. That confident, radiant, open-hearted woman begins to retreat. She becomes quieter, more cautious, not because she wants to be, but because the absence taught her something painful, that being herself didn't keep him there. And if being herself wasn't enough to hold someone's attention, then who is she supposed to be now? She doesn't want to become cold. That's not her nature, but the sting of disappearing without reason forces her to build armor. The kind of armor that doesn't shine, but dulls her light just enough to avoid being hurt again. Because deep down, she's not just mourning a person. She's mourning the confidence that slowly erodes every time her love is met with silence. Every time her presence goes unnoticed, every time she chooses someone who doesn't choose her back, and even though she knows logically that another person's inability to show up isn't her fault, the heart doesn't always follow logic. The heart follows feelings, and in that quiet, torturous absence, those feelings grow louder, messier, more confusing. It's strange how the smallest things become the loudest reminders. When someone you once shared so much with disappears, it's not the grand moments she misses first. It's the little things, the tiny, seemingly insignificant moments that once made her feel connected, grounded, safe. It's the way you used to say good morning without fail, even if there was nothing else to talk about that day. It's the way your laugh would come through the phone, unfiltered and genuine, and how that laugh made her feel like everything was okay in the world. She remembers the inside jokes that made no sense to anyone else, but felt like your private language. The ones that would make her smile at random moments during the day, and now, just make her pause. The absence of those things isn't just noticed, it's felt. Deeply, she walks into a room and hears a song playing in the background, one you both used to sing out loud like fools. And suddenly her mood shifts, not because the song changed anything, but because it reminded her. It reminded her of when things felt easy, when the connection was alive, when she didn't have to wonder what happened or why the energy shifted. And it's in those moments that the grief becomes real, because that's what it is, grieving a presence that once was, a connection that made her feel seen. She remembers how she used to look forward to sharing the smallest wins with you. Something funny that happened during her day, a thought that crossed her mind, a random observation about the world, things she didn't even think twice about sharing. Now she catches herself mid-thought, realizing there's no one to send that message to anymore. So she holds it in, and over time she holds in more than just the message. She holds back parts of herself, because it's not just about the communication. It's about what that communication represented. Safety, warmth, presence. She misses being known in the details, the way you knew her favorite time of day, the way you picked up on her mood just by the way she texted, the way you could tell when she needed space or when she needed to be held, even from a distance. That kind of knowing doesn't come easily. It's built, it's nurtured, and when it's gone, it leaves a void that no one else can quite fill, because she doesn't just miss you, she misses who she got to be when she was with you. She misses how easy it felt to be herself in your presence, the comfort of not having to explain every part of her, the joy of being understood without having to over-explain, and that's what lingers most in your absence. The little things, the routines, the shared looks, the quiet moments that once felt so ordinary and now feel sacred. Sacred because they were real, sacred because they mattered, sacred because they're gone. At first, she tries to stay soft. She tells herself it's okay, that maybe there's a reason for the silence, a justification for the absence. She gives the benefit of the doubt because that's what her heart wants to do. But day by day, as the silence stretches and the presence she once depended on fades, something shifts inside her. The softness starts to harden, not because she wants to be cold, but because she needs to protect what's left of her. She begins to build walls, not out of bitterness, but out of necessity. You see, a woman doesn't just wake up one day and decide to be guarded. It happens gradually. She used to reply quickly, now she hesitates. She used to initiate conversations, now she waits. She used to share parts of herself freely, now she holds back, not because she no longer has the desire to connect, but because she's been reminded that people leave, even when you give them your best. Even when you show up with pure intentions, even when you love without holding back. And so the walls rise, not to push people away, but to keep her safe from breaking again. She stops dreaming aloud, stops making plans that include someone else. She becomes her own comfort, her own reassurance, her own emotional anchor, and while that might sound like strength, and in many ways it is, there's also a sadness in it. Because she never wanted to carry everything alone, she wanted partnership, she wanted a safe space to land, to fall, to be vulnerable, but when that space disappears, she teaches herself not to need it. She's not angry, not on the surface. She doesn't lash out, doesn't go looking for confrontation. But the walls are there, quiet, firm, subtle. She becomes harder to read, harder to reach. The version of her that once laughed a little louder, loved a little more openly, becomes more cautious, more reserved. She's learned that vulnerability can sometimes be met with absence, and that lesson comes at a cost. So she adjusts, not to punish anyone, but to prevent herself from falling into that same hollow space again. She builds these walls even with the people who haven't hurt her, because now the fear is no longer tied to just one person. It's tied to the experience, to the pattern, to the possibility that being open leads to being let down. So she becomes her own sanctuary. Her emotions don't flow as freely, not because she doesn't feel deeply, but because she's tired of feeling alone in her depth, tired of reaching out only to be met with silence, tired of pouring from a place no one bothers to refill. And so the walls stay, not high enough to block everyone out completely, but just tall enough to keep her heart from being seen too easily. Just tall enough to make anyone who wants to come close work a little harder, speak a little louder, show up a little more consistently. There comes a moment when the pain stops being a weight and starts becoming a mirror that shows her who she really is, who she's always been, underneath all the ache. It's not immediate, and it's definitely not pretty at first. But over time, in the quiet, in the spaces where she once waited for messages that never came or made room for someone who never showed up, she begins to notice something, herself, the version of her that existed long before she gave so much of her love away. The version that didn't shrink to fit someone's comfort. The version that wasn't constantly trying to prove her worth just to be chosen. That version starts to reemerge. It starts in small, almost unnoticeable ways. Maybe she picks up an old hobby she used to love. Maybe she starts waking up earlier just to have a moment of peace before the world starts spinning again. She begins to pour into herself with the same energy she once poured into someone else. She lights candles for no reason. She wears perfume just because she loves the way it makes her feel. She starts to hear her own voice more clearly again, unclouded by confusion or unmet expectations. There's a shift, not loud, not dramatic, but steady, a quiet reclaiming. Her thoughts become less about what went wrong and more about what she wants, what she deserves, what she dreams about when no one's watching. She spends less time checking her phone and more time checking in with herself. How am I feeling? What do I need today? What boundaries do I need to set? Not for others, but for me. This becomes her new rhythm. Not because she's moved on completely, but because she's remembered something powerful, that her life doesn't pause just because someone else walked away. She begins to glow differently. There's a peace that settles in her chest. And knowing that doesn't need permission from anyone else. She laughs more, but it's no longer for someone else's validation. It's from her own joy, from the relief of realizing that she can feel whole again, not because someone came back, but because she came back to herself. Her eyes regain that light, that spark, that quiet fierceness that says, I'm not broken, I'm rebuilding. It's not about pretending the pain didn't exist. It's about refusing to let it define her, and that's where the real transformation happens. In the way she stands taller, in the way she speaks more clearly, in the way she chooses peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and herself over waiting. There's power in that, not the loud kind that demands attention, but the kind that radiates from a woman who knows she's enough. A woman who realizes that being alone isn't the same as being lonely, that solitude can be sacred, that healing is not about forgetting someone else. It's about remembering yourself and loving her enough not to abandon her again. At some point, after the silence has been processed, after the tears have dried on pillows no one else will ever see, she begins to see things clearly, not through the lens of heartbreak or confusion, but through wisdom. She starts to understand that love isn't just about how much you feel for someone. It's about how that love makes you feel about yourself. It's about how that person shows up for you. And your absence, no matter the reason, taught her something you never intended to teach, the truth about what she deserves. She begins to notice the difference between effort and excuses. She realizes that being emotionally available isn't a request too big, but a standard too often ignored. The way she used to accept the bare minimum, mistaking it for real effort, she doesn't do that anymore. She now understands that love is not confusing. Love doesn't feel like overthinking, like questioning her worth every night, like wondering if she's asking for too much when all she ever really wanted was consistency. In your absence, she studied the patterns. She paid attention to what went unsaid, to how often she was the one reaching out, the one giving, the one stretching, and in that reflection she found answers, not the ones she may have begged the universe for, but better ones. Answers that whispered to her that her capacity to love was never the problem, her heart was never too much, her vulnerability was never a weakness. What was lacking wasn't in her, but in the way she was being met. She grows tired of waiting, tired of hoping someone will change, tired of bending just to be chosen. She begins to walk differently, not with arrogance, but with intention. She listens more carefully to actions than words. She sets boundaries not to push people away, but to protect her peace. Because she's learned that peace is a luxury, she refuses to trade for potential ever again. The kind of love she's now open to feels safe, grounded, real, not the kind that keeps her guessing, doubting, and chasing. Now she notices the red flags earlier. She speaks up instead of staying quiet to keep the peace. She doesn't water herself down to be more palatable, and she doesn't shrink to fit into places that once made her feel small. She's not bitter, just wiser, not closed off, just more discerning. She doesn't carry the weight of needing to prove her worth anymore because she finally knows it. So if ever you wonder what she's become in your absence, understand this. She's become the kind of woman who refuses to beg for love, who refuses to settle for half-hearted energy, who refuses to hand over her heart to someone who doesn't know how to hold it. Because now, she doesn't just know what she wants, she knows what she deserves. And she'll never unlearn that truth again.